At 04:20 in the morning, the sea looks empty, until it doesn't. A black horizon, a single ribbon of moonlight. And on the bridge of a US Navy fleet tanker, the radar screen blooms with specks that don't belong. At first, it reads like a fishing cluster, random, slow, harmless. The operator watches the returns drift. Then the pattern changes. The dots tighten. They accelerate. They align into lines and arcs, like a net being thrown. 3:30. The watch team calls it out. Multiple fast contacts, closing from more than one direction. The bridge goes quiet in that specific way it does when everyone understands the same thing at once. Unknowns become high-speed craft. And now you can see them with the naked eye. White wakes carving through the dark, 30 speedboats moving with purpose, not chance. This ship isn't carrying smartphones or jewelry. It's carrying fuel. JP-5, the lifeblood that keeps carrier aircraft in the air. 8.2 million gallons of it, enough to feed a battle group's tempo for days. If pirates get onto this deck, it's not just a hostage story, it's a floating trigger. One mistake, one spark, one panicked turn at the wrong moment, and the consequences don't stay on the ship. Some viewers always ask, why not just open fire? Because on a tanker, chaos is the enemy. The goal is to keep control of distance, of motion, of escalation. The escort destroyer nearby isn't looking for a brawl. It's looking for a clean outcome. Deny boarding, protect the cargo, and keep the sea from turning into a disaster zone. 4:20. The contacts commit. The swarm spreads, trying to box the tanker, to overwhelm it with angles and speed. Alarms rise. Red lights wash the bridge. The captain's voice cuts through the noise. Keep course. Keep discipline. Protect the crew. Protect the ship. On screen, we're going to decode what happens next, step by step, because this is where modern naval defense becomes a race against time. The chain is simple, and it's everything. Detect, identify, general quarters, shield the tanker, break the swarm. Tonight, we're breaking down the logic of survival at sea, how you stop 30 boats without turning a fuel tanker into a catastrophe, why the first minutes are about clarity, not chaos, and how swarm tactics collapse the moment coordination breaks. And one question hangs over all of it. Why would pirates choose a Navy fuel tanker in the first place? How do you stop 30 boats without turning it into a disaster? And when the first wave fails, what happens next? When the Navy stops reacting and decides to hit the source. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand where it happens and what kind of game the Gulf of Aden has become. On a map, the region looks like a clean corridor between seas. In reality, it's a funnel, a narrow logic line where global shipping concentrates into predictable lanes, especially at night, especially before dawn. In these hours, visibility is at its worst. Watch teams are running on routine, and distance becomes a weapon. If something is 15 miles away, you still have time to think. If it's 5 miles away and closing fast, your options collapse into seconds. That's why this place is a trap. Not because the ocean is small, but because the traffic is predictable. The choke points are real, and the window for reaction is brutally short. And in that trap, a fuel tanker is not just another ship, it's a floating trigger. A container ship carries commerce. A tanker carries momentum. JP-5 is aviation fuel, the kind that keeps carrier aircraft launching and recovering. That's why the stakes feel different here. You're not defending cargo in the ordinary sense. You're defending the engine that sustains a whole tempo of operations. In the wrong hands, it becomes leverage. In the wrong conditions, it becomes catastrophe. And in a swarm situation, catastrophe doesn't require someone to win. It only requires confusion. That's the part most people miss about modern piracy. It isn't a duel. It's not a naval battle in the old sense. It's an economy, an industry built on control, perception, and negotiation. The file you're following describes something closer to a semi-military organization than a random gang. A network on shore, a hierarchy, financiers, and a mastermind who thinks in logistics and profit, not glory. Boats are tools. Crews are manpower. The ocean is the delivery route. The product is leverage. Because the real objective is not to destroy a ship. The objective is to own the moment, to seize enough control of the bridge, of the deck, of the crew's freedom of movement, that the story instantly changes from pursuit to negotiation. Piracy lives inside that switch. Once it becomes a hostage and ransom equation, time favors the pirates. The longer the standoff goes, the more pressure builds on companies, governments, and families. That's why the first minutes matter more than the last hours. Now add the target, a Navy fuel tanker. On paper, a tanker looks like a fortress, massive hull, towering superstructure, bright floodlights, and the presence of a military flag. But tactically, a tanker is fragile in a way the ocean punishes. It's large, heavy, and slow to change its mind. Turning radius is not a steering wheel problem, it's physics. A fast skiff can pivot in a heartbeat. A tanker commits to a course the way a train commits to a track. That means a swarm isn't trying to race the ship. It's trying to shape the ship's options. Force it to keep straight. Force it to slow. Force it to choose between safety and speed. And once that choice exists, the attackers are already winning time. There's another layer, risk management. If you are defending a tanker loaded with aviation fuel, you don't get the luxury of a messy response. You can't treat every problem like it's solved by more aggression. You treat it like a hazard, contain it, control it, and keep it from escalating. That's why professional responses prioritize geometry and intent. It's not about max firepower. It's about breaking the attack before it becomes irreversible. That's where rules of engagement and reality come in. From the outside, people imagine a clean, cinematic answer. Instant engagement, instant end. But real operations rarely start there. They start with identification. They start with warnings. They start with creating certainty. Who are they? How many? What's their behavior? Are they closing? Are they coordinating? Because in this environment, misreading a contact isn't just embarrassing, it can be disastrous. And on a fuel tanker, disastrous is not a metaphor. So the objective becomes surgical. Break intent and break coordination. Swarm attacks look overwhelming because they multiply angles, noise, and confusion. They create the sensation that there are too many threats to track, too many directions to cover. But swarms have a weakness. They depend on teamwork. They need shared timing, shared direction, and the belief that the target can be overwhelmed. If you can fracture that, if you can force the swarm to split, hesitate, or lose formation, then the attack stops being one big problem and becomes many small problems. And small problems can be managed. That is why this is harder than the usual pirate versus cargo ship story. A commercial ship is trying to survive and escape. A Navy tanker is trying to survive, escape, and prevent an escalation that could spiral into something far worse. It's protecting people, protecting fuel, protecting operational tempo, and protecting the surrounding sea from becoming the headline. And that brings us back to the clock. Because at 4:20, it stops being contacts on a screen and becomes an attack run. 3:30. On the bridge, the radar picture looks messy. Small returns scattered near the shipping lane, the kind of clutter you learn to ignore after enough mid-watches. For a moment, it reads like a fishing cluster. Slow, irregular, nothing that screams attack. But then the watch officer leans closer, not because the screen got brighter, but because the pattern got smarter. The contacts aren't drifting, they're aligning. One by one, the dots begin to move with intent, tightening into lanes, accelerating in bursts, forming a spread that makes no sense for fishermen and perfect sense for a swarm. The operator tags the first track, then the second, then the third. The bridge fills with clipped callouts, bearing, range, speed. The watch team stops speaking in questions and starts speaking in facts. Multiple fast contacts, closing. The tanker holds its course, a giant moving in the dark, floodlights washing the deck in hard white, while the sea beyond stays ink black. At this hour, the ocean hides everything except motion. And motion is exactly what the radar is showing. Fast, coordinated motion, coming in from more than one direction. The captain doesn't need a dramatic speech. He needs a switch flipped. General quarters. The words change the ship's posture. The tone of alarms carries through the hull. On the bridge, the lighting shifts. Red low-light mode, screens glowing in green and amber. It's the same bridge, but suddenly it feels like a different world. Narrower, sharper, more procedural. Every crew member knows where to go and what to do, because confusion is the one thing you cannot afford on a fuel tanker. Tracks multiply, labels appear. The radar operator is no longer painting contacts. He's building a story. He marks the fastest returns. He highlights the ones splitting wide to flank. He circles the cluster that seems to be acting as a coordinator. The watch officer calls for visual confirmation, and on the wing of the bridge, someone finally sees them. Thin white wakes cutting across the black surface like scratches on glass. The wakes are the giveaway. Wakes don't lie. 30 speedboats in formation don't have to look big to be dangerous. Their power is not mass, it's geometry. They don't need to defeat the tanker in a fight. They don't need to sink anything. They only need one thing, to force control long enough to win leverage. That's the line that matters in piracy. Control long enough. Because if a ladder catches the rail, if a hook bites the deck, if the crew is pressured into retreating from the wrong passageway, the entire incident shifts categories. It stops being approaching craft and becomes boarding attempt. And once that threshold is crossed, the timetable stops belonging to the ship. So the tanker does what a tanker can do. It keeps moving. It keeps its discipline. It keeps the deck lit and the access points controlled. It's not trying to win a chase. It's trying to survive a window. The ship's size becomes both protection and limitation. It can't juke like a patrol boat, can't snap turn into the swarm. It has to play the only card it truly owns: steady speed, steady course, and zero panic. But the tanker is not alone, not in this scenario. And the difference between alone and escorted is the difference between being hunted and being protected. Somewhere in the darkness, the escort destroyer, USS Laboon, reads the same picture and sees what it really is. A swarm doesn't approach one ship. It approaches an opportunity. And the destroyer's job is to delete the opportunity. The destroyer begins to screen. And that word sounds simple until you understand what it means in practice. Screening is not just being nearby. It's positioning. It's placing steel and sensors between the threat and the vulnerable ship. It's taking the angle the pirates want and turning it into an angle they can't use. The destroyer doesn't chase one boat, it disrupts the geometry of the swarm itself. On the bridge, the callouts intensify. Tracks separate into groups. One cluster aims for the tanker's stern quarter. Classic, because the stern is where the ship's wake can hide a small craft in the turbulence. Another group fans wide, as if to threaten both sides at once, forcing the tanker into the worst possible choice. Turn into one group and expose itself to the other. And the swarm understands something fundamental. A tanker's greatest fear is a mistake, a hard maneuver, a sudden change, any action that risks the cargo, the crew, the stability of the operation. The swarm tries to weaponize that fear. It tries to make the tanker feel cornered, rushed, overwhelmed. The bridge refuses the emotion. It stays mechanical. They label contacts. They measure closure rates. They call ranges in steady voices. They move personnel away from open deck areas. They lock procedures into place. Lights sweep the water. Horns sound. Radios call out warnings. The ship is broadcasting a message even without words. We see you. We are not confused, and we are not slowing down. Meanwhile, the destroyer is making its own kind of statement, less about sound and more about presence. Its silhouette is smaller than the tanker's bulk, but its intent is sharper. It slides into a position that forces the swarm to rethink their lanes. It becomes a moving barrier, an obstacle the pirates didn't want, because it changes the math. This is where thrillers usually go loud, but the real tension is quiet. It's the silence between decisions, the second-by-second calculation of what comes next. Because every contact on the radar represents a choice the pirates must make. Keep closing and commit, split and risk losing strength, turn away and lose the window. Swarms look fearless when the target is passive. They look far less fearless when the target is disciplined and the escort is active. You can feel the geometry tighten. Some boats surge forward, trying to overwhelm through speed. Others hesitate, as if waiting for a cue. And that hesitation is everything. Because hesitation in a coordinated attack is the first crack in the plan. The destroyer exploits cracks. It doesn't need to destroy every skiff. It needs to break the pack. The tanker stays inside the bubble of protection, not hiding, but not playing hero either. It continues to act like what it is, a high-risk asset. On a ship carrying JP-5, the rule is simple. Control the environment. Keep the deck safe. Keep the crew safe. Keep the ship predictable to itself, even if it becomes unpredictable to the attackers. The watch officer watches the time. 3:45, 3:55, 4:05. The tension isn't just that the swarm is closing, it's that dawn is not here yet. Before dawn, small boats can be ghosts. Before dawn, distance shrinks because visibility shrinks. Before dawn, the ocean belongs to whoever can make the other side react too late. So the Navy does what it always tries to do in the first phase. It buys time. It buys time with speed. It buys time with warning. It buys time with positioning. It buys time by denying clean approach lanes. Because time is more than seconds, it's distance. And distance is options, and options are survival. And the swarm keeps testing the edges of those options. It probes the stern. It feints wide. It tries to create the impression of being everywhere at once. But a radar picture doesn't care about impressions. It cares about vectors. And the vectors are now undeniable. Coordinated closure, aggressive speed, multi-angle approach. In that moment, the incident crosses the line from ambiguous to confirmed. The bridge doesn't need more evidence. The escort doesn't need more permission. Everyone understands the same truth at the same time. The swarm is committing. The sea remains dark, but the situation is suddenly clear. 4:20. The first wave hits the threshold where intent becomes action, where contact becomes assault. And now, every second decides whether JP-5 stays contained. 4:20 doesn't last long, because once the first wave commits, the Navy stops thinking in boats and starts thinking in systems. On the surface, it looks like chaos. 30 fast craft trying to flood the tanker's perimeter, splitting wide, darting in, forcing the ship to feel surrounded. But the escort destroyer, USS Laboon, doesn't answer chaos with chaos. It answers it with geometry. It moves like a shield that can think, sliding into the lanes the pirates want most, denying the clean approach routes that make a swarm feel unstoppable. Here's the first truth we have to decode. A swarm isn't dangerous because there are many boats. A swarm is dangerous because those boats are acting like one mind. So the counter isn't more firepower. The counter is separation. Laboon pushes the problem into smaller problems. It positions between the tanker and the densest clusters, forcing the attackers to make a choice. Keep closing and risk losing cohesion, or break off and lose the window. Searchlights rake the water. Warnings crackle over radio. The tanker stays disciplined. Steady speed, steady course. Because on a fuel ship, stability is part of defense. The escort's job is not to create a cinematic battle. It's to keep JP-5 contained and the crew alive through the most volatile minutes of the night. And then you see the pattern. The swarm begins to fracture. One group surges too far ahead and loses the protective comfort of numbers. Another group hesitates, suddenly unsure if this is still an easy target. The wide flanking line drifts wider, trying to keep pressure, but pressure without coordination becomes noise. The ocean is still dark, but the attacker's plan is getting exposed under the only light that matters, the light of control. This is sustained overwatch in action. Not a single dramatic moment, but a relentless denial of opportunity. The escort keeps the swarm from settling into a boarding lane. It keeps forcing them to reform, re-aim, recommit, until recommitment becomes too expensive. Fuel burns, nerves burn, the window closes. But the turning point in this story isn't just what happens on the sea. It's what happens in the decision chain behind it. Because while Laboon is breaking the geometry, the captain and the watch teams are asking the question that matters most. Who is coordinating this? And where did they launch from? In the Files narrative, this is where the decision flips. The destroyer doesn't just want to survive the wave. It wants intelligence, real-time clarity. It needs a picture big enough to stop the next wave before it ever forms. That's why the request goes up the chain. Increased surveillance, better identification, a response package that can see beyond the horizon. And this is where the operation expands from 2 dimensions to 3. Overhead, an MQ-9 Reaper enters the story as an eye in the dark. High endurance, wide area scanning, building a real-time picture of movement across the sea and toward the coast. In the breakdown logic, it's not about drama, it's about certainty. The moment you can track where boats are coming from and where they're trying to go, piracy loses its best weapon: ambiguity. Helicopters spool up in the distance, another layer of control, faster than ships, able to arrive where ships can't. Able to push a swarm away without turning the deck of a tanker into a hazard zone. Their value is not just force, it's presence, speed, and the ability to deny approach lanes from above. If the sea fight is about holding a line, the air fight is about stretching that line until the pirates can't find a gap. And while the surface and air layers are stabilizing the immediate threat, the operation begins to ask a deeper question. where is the node? This is the step most pirate videos never reach. They end at the retreat. They end at the saved ship. But the file you're following pushes further. If a swarm can launch 30 boats, it's not an accident. It's logistics, it's fuel, it's storage, it's planning. That means there's a place on shore where the capability lives. Boats pulled up, fuel cached, communications managed, and crews staged. In the dramatized narrative, that node is tied to a coastal compound near Barawe, a base-like hub with supplies, boats, weapons, and fuel. And here's where we need to be responsible with framing. In a real-world documentary, you would verify locations and specifics with sources. In this reconstruction style, we treat it as a capability node, a launch point concept, because the takeaway is about the logic, not the claim. So the chain becomes visible. On screen, the operation can be decoded as a sequence, not random reactions, but a layered plan. Survive, stabilize, find the node, cut comms, remove launch capability. Survive. Keep the tanker moving, keep the crew safe, keep JP-5 contained. Stabilize. Break the swarm's geometry, deny boarding lanes, force the attack to dissolve. Find the node. Use persistent eyes, airborne ISR, pattern of life tracking, route tracing, to identify where the swarm launched and where it's trying to regroup. Cut comms. Disrupt the coordination layer so the swarm can't reform, can't time its moves, can't stay a single mind. We keep this conceptual: interference, confusion, loss of reliable coordination, not a technical manual. Remove launch capability. Stop the next wave from being possible by targeting logistics, boats, fuel access, staging, not by glorifying destruction. In the file's escalation, the response expands beyond the ship, a coordinated effort that doesn't just chase skiffs on the water, but collapses the support network that makes mass attacks possible. The point isn't revenge. The point is deterrence, turning the coast from a launch pad into a dead end. And now, the final beat. The swarm's last attempt to stay alive as a plan. You can picture it in the dark. Scattered groups trying to reform, to find their confidence again. But they can't. Not when the escort has denied the lanes. Not when the air picture has clarified the board. Not when coordination is slipping away. What began as 30 boats acting like one organism becomes isolated craft acting like individuals, each one making its own survival calculation. That's when the ocean stops belonging to the attackers. Because once coordination collapses, the swarm is no longer a swarm. It's just boats. And boats, no matter how fast, cannot defeat a layered response built on time, separation, and control. That's the operational lesson that closes this turning point. And it's the line everything else supports. Swarm tactics die when coordination dies. When the last wakes fade and the radar returns to quiet, it's tempting to treat the outcome like a victory scene. Music up, mission complete, roll credits. But piracy doesn't work like that, and neither does prevention. What matters most isn't the moment the swarm turns away. What matters is why it turned away, and what that teaches you about stopping the next one faster. Because the Gulf of Aden doesn't reward drama. It rewards discipline. In this operation breakdown, the takeaway is not the Navy had bigger guns. On a fuel tanker, bigger guns are not the solution you reach for first, because the tanker itself is the hazard. JP-5 changes the entire definition of acceptable chaos. A clean defense is the only defense that counts. So here are the 3 lessons worth keeping, the ones you can apply to every pirate episode we decode next. First, early detection and clear classification beat confusion every time. The swarm didn't become unstoppable at 4:20. It became dangerous at 3:30, when it still looked like a fishing cluster, and the only weapon on the bridge was attention. The difference between contacts and attackers isn't a headline, it's a timeline. Track labeling, closure rate calls, behavior analysis, and disciplined watch standing buy the most valuable currency at sea: distance. And distance buys options. Options buy control. If you wait for the first wake to hit the floodlights, you're already late. If you identify intent early, you can shape the fight before it becomes a fight. Second, break geometry, break coordination, faster than you break boats. Swarm tactics work because they multiply angles and compress your decision time. They want you to feel surrounded, rushed, and overwhelmed. The counter is not to chase every skiff. The counter is to delete the swarm's advantage by forcing separation, denying approach lanes, cutting off clean flanks, and pushing the attackers into small, disconnected problems. Once a swarm loses the ability to act as a single unit, it loses the confidence that makes it commit. That is why positioning and lane denial are so powerful. They destroy intent without creating unnecessary chaos. And that leads to the third lesson, the one modern operations are built around. ISR isn't just information. ISR is decision speed, and decision speed is the real weapon. The moment you have persistent eyes above the scene, wide area surveillance, pattern recognition, real-time tracking, you stop guessing. You stop reacting blindly. You stop fighting shadows. You begin to see the network behind the boats, launch points, regroup routes, communications nodes, and logistics. And when you see the network, you can choose responses that reduce future risk instead of merely surviving the present wave. In other words, the fastest way to end piracy is not winning one encounter. It's making the next encounter harder to launch. Now, one important note for credibility and safety. Because this channel is about decoding tactics, not claiming certainty where we can't prove it. On screen, we'll label it clearly. Dramatized reconstruction inspired by modern naval capabilities and piracy patterns. That line matters. It tells the viewer exactly what they're watching. A reconstruction designed to teach the logic of layered defense, not a courtroom transcript. And it protects the integrity of the channel long term. So, what does all of this mean for the series? It means the story doesn't end when the swarm breaks. It continues into the next question. What happens when pirates pick the wrong target? Not a tanker, not an obvious military asset, but a ship that looks civilian and is bait. What happens when the trap is set before the first wake even appears? That's the next breakdown. If you want more step-by-step naval encounters decoded like this, timelines, geometry, decision chains, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you want next in the comments. Swarm, tanker, or destroyer escort. And remember, out here, the next contact doesn't announce itself. It starts in the dark.